Introduced. We are going to focus today on the problem resolving conversation mat that was part of our cognitive coaching training. So to begin, we wanted to present the group a scenario. And as you review this scenario, I think it's going to be pretty clear that there's certainly some problems embedded within the scenario. So with that, the scenario is presented on the screen, and just a little bit of background. We have this pretend high school that has been solely utilizing virtual learning for the 2020-2021 school year. So thus far, it's been completely virtual learning. The school has done some prep work. They have purchased a platform called Edgenuity for students to engage, and they've also invested a lot of financial resources to purchase a Chromebook for each student within the high school. So now that we kind of know what the setup is of the school, I want to take us to the scenario. And you'll notice here that this scenario involves two people. We've got a geometry teacher, high school geometry teacher, and we have a principal. And the principal has gotten some concern expressed. A parent of a special education student in that geometry class has called the principal with a concern, and the principal is engaging in some conversation with the teacher regarding that parent's concern. So I'm going to give you just a minute or so of quiet time for you to read the entire scenario there.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Go on.
Okay, yeah, just kind of gauging the nonverbal. Looks like everybody has had a chance to read through the scenario. And as you read the scenario, it's pretty obvious that there is a problem. Clearly, there's a problem, and we could even make that plural. Probably multiple problems that's embedded within this scenario. But whenever we're thinking about a problem, the way we think about it is very critical to how we end, how we invest, how we move forward. So the quote here on the slide is the opening of this problem solution or problem resolving conversation section in the cognitive coaching book. This is the transition page. And it's a quote by a psychiatrist who has many best-selling books. And he has stated that the truth is that our finest moments are most likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments, propelled by our discomfort, that we are likely to step out of our ruts and start searching for different ways and truer answers. So, thinking about that scenario and recognizing that it's a problem, where might this silver lining be in this situation? Thinking about it from a coaching perspective, we've got a teacher who, granted, there's a unique situation that the teacher's invested in right now, this virtual learning platform. There are certainly some issues that need to be addressed. But when we're thinking about it from a coaching perspective, that silver lining is really the internal resources that are within that teacher that he or she does not realize is there yet. So, as a coach, how can we take this kind of dark cloud, this problems, and really capitalize on the silver lining, which is the innate abilities of the coachee? And so, that's going to kind of be our goal and our mission as we engage in some learning and some practice around the problem resolving coaching conversation. Let's go back though and look at this scenario. We did acknowledge that there's a problem embedded in this scenario. And as you look at the things that are underlined in red here, we have many problems. Unfortunately, a majority of students are failing. There's concern from a parent that his or her child has a failing midterm grade. And then also we have to acknowledge that this child is a special education student and this child is learning remotely, has that virtual platform, but we need to probably be considering what else is available, what other supports might there be, supports that are missing. We've also got a problem that most students are behind in completing the lessons. And so whenever you look at that, you note the word most. You've got a majority of the students who aren't completing the lesson. You must ask why. What could be the issue there? We've also got this issue that the Edgenuity platform, yes, is offering quizzes and exams on grade level standards, but students are failing. Why might they be failing? Then lastly, we've got an issue where some students, it says some of the students who are trying to complete the assignments were not emailing and asking questions until 7 o'clock at night. So there are some issues here. We've got students who are trying, but they're not having that immediate support because they're emailing at 7 o'clock at night. As such, I think also within this scenario that we can acknowledge that we've got a teacher who's experiencing a lot of different emotions. You can tell by the exclamation marks, you can tell by the immediate responses from the teacher that there might be some feelings of being anxious, being unsuccessful. Perhaps the teacher is feeling a bit overwhelmed or even exhausted. So there's a lot of stuff that's running through this scenario. And as a principal, and in this case, as the coach, what do we need to do? How might we push this teacher to get beyond all of these feelings and try to address this problems, I should say. Without a doubt, the teacher is at a very high stress level. And unfortunately, the teacher lacks resources. And whenever you look at that image on the screen, you've got the two words, low resources. We're not talking about physical resources. We're not talking about the Chromebooks or the platform. We're talking about the teacher having this high degree of stress and lacking the internal resources necessary to move forward and trying to address the issue that's at the forefront here. So basically, we've got a teacher who is stuck. And just like Winnie the Pooh there is stuck, as a coach, we've got to provide some support and some help to get the coachee unstuck. Winnie can't do it alone, and the coachee can't do it alone. So, as a coach, I want us to be thinking about how we might use this problem resolving conversation map to do some of the following things. We want to try to enhance the capacity of the coachee to think productively. Clearly, there are a lot of problems, but as the coach, we want to be able to pull the coachee away from thinking only about the problem and to think productively about steps forward. And then that second box is really about that forward thinking. We want to help the coachee envision a desired state. So refraining from wallowing in the problem and really moving forward to where you want to go. And then lastly there, that third box, as a coach, we want to mediate thinking in order to capacitate internal resources. So we want to be able to get the coachee to have that aha moment where he or she realizes it's in me. I can think differently. I can act differently. And the coach is going to be utilizing questions and specific strategies to help the coachee think in a different way. So, how does that work? Well, in the cognitive coaching book, and you'll see there on the left side of the screen, that's the image of the cognitive coaching book. And there are a variety of different conversational tools that are embedded in the cognitive coaching series. But we're going to focus on this problem resolving conversation memory map. And if you have it accessible, I would encourage you to pull it up. Um, be able to flip back and forth with it. And if you do not have this print copy, you can, of course, access this document in the classroom that is embedded in the classroom. But you'll notice here that this memory mat has lots of different features, and we're going to talk about those. The first section is this PACE. It's the pacing part of the map. And you'll notice that underneath each individual letter, there's a step that you take. For instance, underneath the P, we're going to express empathy. And that's where we're going to, based on what we've heard from the coachee, that's where we're going to identify in that one word what the emotion is that we are inferring from the coachee based on everything that's being expressed. So we're going to identify and acknowledge where the coachee is in terms of emotion. And then you'll see the step to where you go to the A part of it. You acknowledge why that the coach E is feeling a certain way. And you've even got a stem there. Um, in that first part, you're frustrated because you have so many things on your plate and you can't keep up. And then you go to the C where you state the goal. And then the E is where you basically make that transitional phrase where you're pushing the coachee to envision that desired state where we want to go. So it's like you acknowledge where they are, but then you're pushing them to this upcoming desired state where they want to go. What's their outcome? So that map there gives us lots of information, but there's even more information embedded in the book. And if you've got your book handy, you certainly can use that. It's on page 98 in the cognitive coaching book, but it's also, this section is also in the classroom, and it's item 3. And this is the problem resolving conversation section where you get detailed information about the parts of the map. Now let's go back to the map. The first section that we're going to talk about is the pacing part, and that's the PACE. And we've got some narrative information that helps us become a little more knowledgeable about that. So if you'll turn to page 98, or if you're accessing item 3 in the classroom, go ahead and pull that out. And I want you just to read silently here the first 3 paragraphs of this one-page document on page 98. And you'll notice that I've got a stop sign image to where you stop. But just read through there and get some information regarding the pacing, the PACE part. And then in the chat, whenever you're ready, go ahead and share a key point about pacing in the chat from what you've learned from the reading. Yeah, just encourage you to go ahead and start adding to the chat a key point. Thank you, Janet, for being the first one. Yeah, thank you, Lou. We've got ideas embedded in some of the participants' comments about acknowledging, the importance of acknowledging, letting them know they're heard. This is really what we're seeing in some of the response in the scenario is a reaction to stress. It's a physical reaction to the stress. And so us knowing how that people respond to stress and how our brain responds to stress, it's important. And that's what this pacing part is connecting to. This idea of non-judgmental.
Carrie, you brought up one of the key things that I picked out was the fact that it's not about knowing all the details. We're
Mhm.
not trying to ask and this and this and this. So that's a good point as well. Um,
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Carrie, that also reminds me, if you spend too much time asking lots of questions, then you can get trapped in the existing state and never get to the desired state. So all
Mhm.
those details really aren't that critical.
Right, right. And according to the book, it emphasizes that this section, this pacing part, it's short and sweet, and then you need to move on. So it's a great connection there to make.
Thanks. So it looks like we have several responses now. Good deal. You all have done a good job keeping up here.
And I would encourage everyone just to use the scroll button, the scroll up and down there to read your comments, read your colleagues' comments. Um, So now that we kind of have the gist of what this pacing portion of the conversation is about, we have a wonderful tool that helps us kind of visualize this. And it is on page 107 in your book. It's also item 5 in the classroom if you want to access it that way. But whenever you look at this, you can kind of go in steps. So that opening part where you identify the emotion by labeling the emotion in one word, we decrease limbic activity. So it's very intentional and very purposeful why we do this template. So you're something, you identify it, and then you go on to paraphrase the coachee's existing state. And that's where we are transitioning to this shift in thinking, where we're going to try to push the coachee to frame the possible desired state. So we're lifting the idea to something else. And we go over to what they want. What's the goal? Focus on that which is desirable and not yet present. So putting that into words it's a real powerful move there. And in fact, it is identified as a crucial part in this process because most people can be clear about what they don't want, but whenever they are not feeling resourceful, they lack the mental and verbal resources to articulate what they do want as their goal, outcome, or purpose. So, thinking about the importance of making it visual, we want to envision what we want. And then lastly, that statement of, and you're looking for a way to make that happen, that's the pathway statement to segue to resourcefulness, like pushing on their internal ability to be able to do it. So the text that's popping up here is just kind of a summary. It's like a bumper sticker type thing for us whenever we're thinking about this pacing part of the conversation. Really showing the research behind why you do this. Reducing the language to a few words reduces the load on the easily overloaded prefrontal cortex. And Rock in 2009 says that reducing a problem to one short sentence can bring about insight. And as a coach, that's what we're wanting to occur. We want the coachee to have this insight when we give a goal. So what you want is to that's where that cognitive shift can occur, capacitating the prefrontal cortex. So lots of intentionality embedded in just this one sentence that we're going to be working with as part of the PACE. So thinking of that, what I want you to do is to kind of individually right now practice completing the PACE based on the written scenario that you were presented with at the start of this. You've got a resource to help you with it on page 106 in the text. And then also it's item 4 in the classroom. You've got a template there that you could actually just kind of plug in if you wanted to. But it just shows you the different parts, the PACE. And I want to give you just a minute or so of quiet time for you individually to go ahead and just tentatively sketch out the different parts of this template. So based on the scenario, high school geometry teacher and the principal, what would the principal be saying as a response to the geometry teacher after he or she has heard all of this? So to the geometry teacher, and go ahead and identify the emotion you think, and then the because part, and then that goal, and then that pathway statement. So just do some quiet time thinking about that and trying to complete this individually. Okay, so you've had a minute of individual think time and sketching out that pace. Now we're going to let you talk to a partner and you share out what you've identified, your statement, your pace for this particular scenario with someone else. So Paul's going to click a button and ask you to join a breakout room, and we're only going to be in there for like a minute or two. So just share out what you've identified as the pace, the statement, and each person share back and forth, and then we'll come back together, large group. And there's no
Okay.
right or wrong on this.
Stacy and Ann Burns left for a 1:30 meeting. Just wanted you to know, but we're going into breakout rooms right now.
Should we pause the recording right now? Okay, well, welcome back. So you had a little time there to discuss the pace, the pacing part of this template. Now we're going to transition to the section that's on the right-hand side of this memory mat, the lead part. And if you'll notice by the heading at the top, leading is where we locate and amplify resources. So now that we have identified where the coachee is and where the coachee wants to go, we've got this agreed upon goal. We're going to engage into the lead portion of the conversation. So thinking about that, in the lead section, the first step is to ask some questions that are specifically connected to states of mind. So if you'll notice here, as a review, there are 5 states of mind that are identified as part of cognitive coaching: consciousness, craftsmanship, efficacy, flexibility, and interdependence. So as the coachee, as the coach, we want to be able to craft questions that are in.
Hi, Ann. You don't know. I'm going to unmute you here. Can you?
Was that intentional?
Yes, I was just going to tell you were accidentally invited. Jenny, I guess just must have had, your name is Ann Mitchell, and we have an Ann
Yes.
M, another participant. And I think she accidentally invited you. So I just wanted you to know that we're sorry and that you don't have to
No
stay.
worries.
We're doing a cognitive coaching follow-up session with some principals and
No worries. I've
university
already found
people.
it helpful. I mean, it's
Uh,
just really lightning,
so,
but I will get out of this space.
okay,
So,
all right.
thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
And then also, we want to make sure that we allocate pause time. Pausing and paraphrasing is critical to processing so that the coachee can make new connections. And that's what we want to have happen, new connections in their thinking. So looking at the lead part underneath number 1, where do I start the lead? You want to initiate a lead question intended to access and illuminate a state of mind. So considering that we are not in a real conversation, we've got this mock conversation, we have gone ahead and identified that the state of mind that we want to really focus on is efficacy for this scenario. So we need to think a little bit about, what does efficacy mean? Well, according to the cognitive coaching resources, this is where we want to invite reflection about being in charge. We want to elicit knowledge, skill, or positive attitude. So, how do we make that happen? What would be something that we could do in terms of questioning that would eliminate this efficacy? So in the book, it gives 2 provided questions that you could possibly utilize to do step 1 of this lead. They've got a question that stated, when you have faced situations like this before, what was effective? Then you've got, what are your hunches about the choices you have? So these are some provided questions that you could use for step 1 of the lead. Now, I want to make it very clear that this scenario that we've been presented with, this virtual learning for the entire school year thus far, is probably something that the teacher has never experienced before, or the principal. But we do know that the teacher before has faced situations wherein students are not completing assignments, or the students, unfortunately, you have a high rate of failure, or you have a parent who's bringing an issue to the principal. So while it may not be the exact situation, there are some similarities that we could probably pull out. Now, these 2 questions are lined up with with section 1 of the lead. There are also some other questions that you could possibly utilize, and they're given to you in the cognitive coaching book. On page 116 of the book, and on item 6 in the classroom, you see this handout here. And you'll notice on this, and this is all about efficacy, and there's one of these handouts for all of the 5 states of mind in the text, but we're looking just at efficacy right now. I do want you to notice the 4 types of verbal moves to mediate efficacy. You can see with each A, B, C, and D that there's an intentional purpose there. And then you've even got some suggestions there on the right, a way to lead to greater efficacy, some question stems there for you to review. So thinking about the scenario that we've been encountered with, we've thought about the pacing part. We are now at the leading part. Which of these questions might you utilize if you were engaged in a conversation around this scenario? Just a minute or 2, or just a minute actually, for you to review these questions that are provided and think about, which one might you utilize if you were the coach. Okay, so hopefully you picked out a question or 2 that you would use if you were the coach. Because in a few minutes, somebody's going to be the coach, and we're going to engage in a role play activity where we use this problem resolving memory map. But to prepare us for using it, I do want to bring out some points that this particular conversation memory mat, there are some coach set-asides that we need to be aware of. Closure, we're not going to solve the problem. It's not, the goal of this is not to solve the problem and the problems that we identified. The goal of it is that we empower the coachee to utilize their internal resources to solve their own problem. We need to recognize that this could be very uncomfortable as we work to resolve a problem. So we've got to set aside the need for comfort and then set aside the need for comprehension. You don't have to understand everything about the problem to help a person have a new thought. And that, of course, is our goal. So with all that in mind, we are going to practice it. We're going to actually use this coaching conversation memory mat. And we're going to engage in a role play activity where the principals in today's meeting will be playing the role of the principal. Educator prep folks, our EPPs, are going to play the role of the teacher in the provided scenario. So let's kind of go back to that scenario, refresh our understanding of it. And we're going to take 8 minutes to practice using this memory map, this problem resolving conversation memory map. And I'm going to ask Paul to give a little detail about numbers. We're going to go in groups of 2, of course. One person's going to be the principal and one person's going to be the teacher. And we're going to give you about 8 minutes to use the map. Now, remember, you've already kind of completed the PACE part. And we've given some possible questions for you to utilize in the lead part. So now we're going to give you some time to put all that into place. We're going to practice it. So Paul, if you could let us know number-wise, how many groups we're going to have. And if we have a situation, I know we probably don't have equal number of principals and EPPs. So depending on whenever you get invited to your room, just introduce yourself, of course. And if there's a principal in the room, you play the role of the principal and the EPP will play the role of the teacher. If there are 2 EPPs, then you all can decide who's going to play which role.
Okay,
So
so
Paul?
I know Lou has to leave at 1:45,
Right.
and we have 4 principals with us, so we're going to have 4 rooms. So Carrie will be in a room, and there'll be 1 or 2 EPPs in there with her. And so if there's more than 1 EPP, you all can decide who's going to play the role of the teacher, and then the other EPP person can just kind of observe what's going on. All right. So
And
we'll
I
have
said
4
8
rooms.
minutes, but for time, we'll just take about 5.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Any questions, anyone, before we go into our room? So principals, you all are going to be using the problem resolving conversation memory map and leading through as much of the PACE and everything as you possibly can. And an EPP will be the teacher, the geometry teacher that's in the scenario. Here we go.
So we're a little off on time, but we'll just have to be fast, Paul, whenever they come out.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, because
like
it's 1:45 already.
well, it's 1:40.
1:41, yeah. And Lou said she had a hard stop at 1:45. So I put her in a room with Glenn Beatty, and then I put Michael Kessinger and Rosie Young together. And then everybody else just has a principal and a EPP. Rethinking about it, I probably shouldn't have put Janet. I probably should have put somebody in there with Janet because she's not even been through the training.
You're on mute, Eve.
Sorry, I was just talking away. I think that's still okay, Paul. We'll just have one group do a quick share. They didn't get, I mean, 5 minutes is not a lot of time for getting through one of those scenarios, but every now and then that's what happened to us when we were practicing. So. Stacy, I think it's going great. I thought this.
Good.
I think it's so much better than just bringing them in and saying let's talk problems. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Quick talk, huh? quick chat there, girls.
Yeah, we know
And
that we
boys.
did not give you enough time to do everything that you needed to do. So welcome back, everybody.
Zoom in, zoom out.
Yes, exactly. So we're trying to stick to our 45-minute request that you all made from our previous communications with you all. So just kind of like as you reflect on our time together, because we're getting ready to end, our goal with our follow-ups was to take the skills that we've learned from cognitive coaching and to take these skills, these memory mats, these different things that we've learned, and to utilize them with some of the problems that you're facing. And so we tried to pick a scenario that would really resonate with all of us, because all of you as principals are probably facing this or something similar. So we did spend a lot of time having to teach, because half the group hasn't been through days 7 and 8. And so the memory mat that made the most sense for what we're all facing in reality with the pandemic is the problem resolving conversation, which we haven't had. But now that we've been through it and we know it, our vision for what's left of our time together this year for future meetings would be that we take this and we use it with scenarios, with problems that you're facing. And we would like to get those scenarios anonymously, so nobody knows, hey, they're Carrie's or they're Amy's, or this is something that, that's going on in Pike County. It would be anonymous, and then we could work through and utilize these skills and really make it make sense. So that's kind of like what we wanted to give you a taste of, so that we could get you to come back to other follow-ups and do more. So before we close though, I would like to have just someone share out from like the use in their breakout sessions. How did it go? What did you like about it? Anything that you'd like to share out, just so we have some closure to that. And then we'll look at our next meeting and just talk about emails and some different things. So who would like to share out? Just one quick share out.
This is Janet, and I'm new
Thank you,
to it.
Janet.
And Amy was my partner, and she was fantastic.
Mhm.
And sounds like she's actually used these techniques with some of the people in her school. And my question was about, I can foresee somebody, even though you're trying to go through the pace and the leading questions, of them saying, I don't care, I'm not doing anything else. And Amy phrased it great, where she said she's dealt with a lot of hotheads, and how she would handle that using these techniques. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah. And I know all of you all will probably want to do the same thing. When Winnie the Pooh was stuck, all of us just wanted to go over there and pull Winnie the Pooh's big butt out of the dirt, right? And of course, that doesn't fix anything, because the next time Winnie the Pooh gets stuck, then we're right back to helping Winnie the Pooh out again, and that defeats the whole purpose. As a leader, we want to arm people with the ability to take a situation and figure a way to get through it. And they're going to come out on the other side much better and much different than what we would have done just ourselves, because we know in the time of this pandemic, none of us have all the magic answers just waiting on our desk to give everybody. So the more people you empower, and you can do that through cognitive coaching, the more people you empower, the better the solutions end up being, and the better that your school ends up being as a result of it. So thank you for sharing that, Janet. So I am going to open up a poll real quick before we leave. So on your screen, if you'll look, we would like to meet with you all again and continue to do some of this work where we are practicing our cognitive coaching skills with the reality that we're all facing. So there's 4 choices for our next meeting. So if you just go ahead before you leave today and go ahead and tell us what your wish would be, we will follow up in an email with the results of this, and also contact those people that couldn't be here with us today to try to get a bigger group the next time. And of course, our vision for this is really to get all of us using these techniques and these skills that we've learned through cognitive coaching, and to really try to tackle some of the issues that all of us are facing during this pandemic with virtual learning, face-to-face learning, hybrid learning, helping teachers who really aren't trained to do all this stuff that they're expected to do, and so on. So once you've
And for the
done your vote,
EPPs, for the
yes,
EPPs, you all are starting to use the Sims videos with some of your candidates. And so these methods in terms of coaching would be, I think, contribute highly to your discussions in working with your candidates. So keep in mind, some of the scenarios are very appropriate both ways.
yes. And this is some great
Absolutely.
content for your EPP classes.
I taught class Saturday, and I have one student that this would have been very appropriate for.
Glenn, that's awesome that you added that book to the course. That's great. That's great.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
use
look,
we use a variation of it, not the actual manual, so that way
Yes.
you can use the mats and you don't get into any copyright issues.
yes,
So
yes,
you can talk about all those pieces that we really wanted to
Yes.
get to. with this
that's
stuff.
awesome. That's awesome.
That's the kind of growth that we're hoping to see from this network and from working together this way. Great, good work.
Anybody else not voted? If you, again, you can check all the dates that you are available. It's looking like November the 18th, 1 to 1:45 is going to be our next meeting. So, and in the meantime, be thinking about scenarios that you think that you would like to offer out without your name on it, without your school. That might be something that we practice with and give you practice in dealing with in your buildings. And that's really all we have today. If you have any thoughts before we leave, definitely share those. Otherwise, thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Sorry,
Thanks,
we ran
Rocky,
over.
for making that comment in chat.
That's
Goodbye,
great.
everyone.
Thank you so much. It's very good.
Thanks again. We're trying to keep these short.